No worries. Okay. All right. We're just gonna go for this because we are and we're friends. And so if it turns into something wild and crazy, then it is what it is. It's fine.
I'm here for it.
Um, all right. Hey, everybody. I am so excited to be here today with my friend Rachel Bearbower of Small Shop Strategies. Welcome, Rachel.
Hi, it's great to be back.
I know. So we were just chatting that you were my very first interview of the podcast when it was 100 Degrees of Entrepreneurship. And here we are kind of kicking things off again. So excited that it's you because I feel like we're buddies and we can just kind of chat. And so tell us about you and about your business and what your business does.
Yeah, so like you said, small shop strategies. I work with small shop executive directors, really focusing on helping them reclaim their time. And in what's really important about that is when you reclaim your time, then you have more time to build better relationships with your donors, raise more money. You can't do that if you are just like scattered and all over the place and feeling frustrated and overwhelmed. So I really try to help EDs find that really stabilize. And I do that through a program called Sprouted, which is my membership program for small shop EDs. And yeah, that's what we do.
And how did you realize that this was a problem in the nonprofit sector? Is it something that you saw? Is it something that you personally experienced? How did you realize that, this sort of, this lack of focus and this disorganization was something that was a problem that needed to be solved?
Well, teach what you know. So start there. I was that overwhelmed executive director who always felt guilty for not working. I started in a humane society, and so I felt like if I wasn't working, like animals would actually like die because of me. And then that is a lot of pressure. That is a lot of
Yeah,
pressure. And then when I was
that
in
is.
EC, I was like, well, obviously I have to be working all the time so that board members and staff and volunteers can see that I'm doing a good job. So definitely personal experience. But then I have worked with hundreds of organizations. And what I have found is they do have this desire to make this impact in the world, to do good, but they are so overwhelmed and they are focusing on all different things all over the place. And so they aren't actually getting to what is most important. And I don't know how I did it. Maybe it's being like the oldest kid of 6 kids and like whatever, but like I'm really good at time management and coming up with
Mm.
strategies to be super efficient and to get the most out of whatever I am doing. And I was like, Edie's got to know how to do this. This is what we need to do.
Mhm. Hmm. Okay, first of all, I did not know that you were the oldest of 6 children. I feel like we've known each other for a while. I did not know that. So that's really interesting. And I feel like, do you feel like, I don't know, like where our heart is almost like too much in the mission that that we let everything just kind of take over, where I feel like in the entrepreneurial space, we're often encouraged to to rest and to have boundaries and to create balance in our lives. But it doesn't really seem like that translates over into the nonprofit sector based on what you're talking about.
I have so many thoughts on this because I think that, hey, there's like the hustle culture that we've seen, which doesn't work. Like you burn out, you're exhausted, you're not going to do your best work if you don't rest. At the same time, there's stuff to do. Like I don't know any entrepreneur, any executive director who hasn't had to just be like, I got to just bust this out. Last night, I'm doing some kind of fractional ED work for an organization, and I had to send out tax receipts. And
Mhm.
I did it the hard way. And they had to go out. I had to get this off my plate. And you know what? I spent like 4 hours doing it. I was up until way too late. And sometimes you just have to do it. So yes, we need to rest. We need to encourage that. In the entrepreneur space, you are a lot more in control of how that works. When you're in a nonprofit, you're reporting to board of directors, to staff, to donors, and your money and how you spend your time, not always your own.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very different. And we don't talk about the kind of the mental labor that is on nonprofits, on executive directors. Yes, we have all the different hats. We need to make sure our books are done. We need to make sure that our programs are running. But in the back of our mind, we're always like, are we raising enough money? Have I filled out that form? Is Social Security, like that? Have I paid my quarterly taxes? Like, are my staff getting what they need? Are they taking their time off? Are all of my board members happy? Like, the emotional and mental labor that happens when you are a leader of an organization or even a business, like it's a
Mm-hmm.
lot. And so I think that oftentimes, like, it's hard to just turn off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, as a mom, I feel like we hear
Oh,
a lot about like the mental load of parents, especially mothers. And so I 100% can relate because it never turns off at 4:30 this morning. I'm like, okay, so I got to get the Valentines for Kyla's class, but they can't be anything with food or candy. So, okay. Like, yes, 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 yes. And I never really thought about that, the sort of mental labor, the mental load of an executive director, really managing all the things, because I feel like in your business, in my business, I have delegated a lot of that because, like you said, I have the control over the money and over my time to be able to do that. Whereas an executive director, maybe he doesn't have control over over the budget, over their own time to be able to delegate. So that's a really interesting it's like contrast, I guess. And so I feel that mental load.
and we created, like, in the nonprofit sector, we created this culture that you should, like, we value burning out. We
Yes.
value working all hours of the night, but we also created this culture where we just don't have the resources to be able to delegate, the resources to, like, make a living wage.
Yeah.
How is
Yeah.
that
It's
right?
this, I know, I don't understand. It's this culture of martyrdom, I feel like, where it's like, yeah, you're valued for working around the clock because it's in pursuit of the mission. It's in pursuit of this greater work. And the work that nonprofits are doing and executive directors are doing is incredible. You're literally changing the world. And you've dedicated your life to changing the world. And that's so important. But like, is it worth it at the cost of burning out yourself and impacting your family? That's hard. So how do we change the culture, Rachel? Like quick casual question for this first call on a Wednesday morning. How do we change the culture of the nonprofit sector? I mean, kind of jokingly, but also like you are working to do that. Like that is what you do. So how do you help support EDs with like that mental load and like the more practical things? Yeah. How do we change the culture?
Uh, oh man, quite simple. Let me break it down in
Perfect.
100 different bullet points.
Step 1, 2, 3.
You know, I think it starts by pausing. And I know that is something that, like, terrifies people. They're like,
Yeah.
I gotta just keep going. I gotta keep doing. And
Feels very unnatural to pause.
yes.
Yeah.
And you have to get very, very clear about what is a priority and, like, what is important, what is urgent, and what have you decided, or what has somebody told you is important and urgent. That is actually not. Great example is picking up the phone, calling donors, asking for money. There's a lot of steps in that. I simplified that quite a bit. That's going to bring money into your organization. It's going to give you resources. It's going to allow you to continue to do the work that you're doing. Posting on social media. It's a great touch point, but it's not going to make the impact that you could call one donor and possibly get $1,000 gift. You could make 1,000 social media posts and not raise a single dime. So it's in an organization, you are always going to be faced with all kinds of decisions. You are always going to be juggling, and you have to be so intentional about what ball you are going to drop. There's no way to keep all of the balls in the air. You have to get really, really good at prioritizing what needs to stay in the air and what can drop. And that is a skill that is learned by failing over and over again and being like, oh, well, I really should have focused on that one. And oftentimes I see in organizations, they pause and then don't get started again, or they pause, or I shouldn't say pause, they freeze. Because they're like, we don't want to do anything wrong. And I think that's another big thing in our sector is we don't allow people to, or we don't allow organizations to be able to take risks. We don't fund them long enough to make a plan for 5 years so that they can make multiple mistakes, so they can get really good at what they're doing. We expect them to figure it all out in a year. Let me tell you, I've never figured anything out that's groundbreaking in a year. I have to fail a lot. I can do that in my business because I have control over that. Inside your nonprofit, different story. So reclaiming your time, stabilizing, understanding what's important, what is important and urgent, and getting that done, what is going to make the most impact, and then also creating boundaries. Like I do this challenge every year where I teach people how to layer their calendar. And I start by putting your non-negotiables. So non-negotiables are you have to pick your kids up for school. You have to make dinner. You have to walk the dog. You have to take your grandma to physical therapy. Okay. So you have your non-negotiables. Then you add in your energy blocks. So we have this idea we have to work 9 to 5. Well, no one can stay productive or work 9 to 5. That's not real life. But I know that I work better in the morning. So I try to do my big projects in the morning, and I don't have meetings until noon. And so adding those in, are you going to be able to add every single thing in? No, but adding that layer so that you know that about yourself and you're not just back to back to back to back in meetings and then you never get anything done. I know as an ED, I felt like I was back to back in committee meetings and board meetings and stuff. And all of a sudden I was like, so when am I supposed to do all the things that it just landed on my to-do list?
Yeah. Yeah, so you end the day with more on your to-do list than you started because you're in meetings all day that then have deliverables afterwards. Yeah. Is there any sort of also asking yourself, do I actually need to be present for this? Because I know I've done a lot of that in my business. I actually don't think I need to be here. So I'm not gonna be. If y'all need me, you know where to find me. But I don't need to be here just to listen. Do you talk about that? Do you find that a lot?
Yeah. I mean, it's going back to juggling those priorities. Is it important for me to be in this meeting, or is it important for me to go to this donor meeting or this networking event? Those are questions that you just have to ask over and over and over again. And sometimes you'll get it right and sometimes you won't. And that's okay. It's practicing. And sometimes everything happens in seasons. So sometimes, you're going to be really on your game and it's going to be great and you're going to have time for all the things. And sometimes you're not. You're just in a season when it's hard. And knowing that this too shall pass will, I don't know, that's what gets me through some of the chaos.
I love that you're teaching this, because I feel like when I worked in nonprofits, I definitely was just like, yes, I go to all the meetings, I do all the things, and like I just figure out and work until it's done. And it really wasn't until I built my business. And frankly, if I'm being honest, it probably wasn't until like the beginning of last year. So just about a year ago was when I really started implementing managing my calendar very intentionally. So like I only take meetings on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday from like this hour to this hour. And I don't have meetings on Thursday and Friday. And like, I never even thought that that was a possibility in when I worked at a nonprofit, when I had a job, a real job. And I feel like I even had to be pushed to do that when I have full control over my own calendar, but I had to even be pushed to do that. So I feel like any, nonprofit leader that's listening, like you do have the power to put some, parameters and some controls and some strategy into your calendar. You don't need to be open and available for every single person from Monday at 9 a.m. till Friday at 5 p.m. Like you don't have to. And there we do have, I feel like we have more control than we think we do. With team meetings, or if you're meeting with your particular department, or you're meeting with your staff, like you have control over that. Just because it's always been on Monday at 11 doesn't mean it needs to be on Monday at 11 for all of eternity. And about what you were saying about making decisions, when you use the example of like, should I spend this time like posting a million things on social media, or like making some donor phone calls? One thing that I learned from a mentor like a long time ago was, when you're making decisions in your organization, this is when I worked for a nonprofit, really thinking about making those $30,000 decisions versus the $30 decision, and thinking about the impact that it's going to generate. Because maybe the social media post, like that feels easy. Let me just like mess around on my phone on Instagram for an hour and I can knock a bunch of stuff off. But like, is that really going to generate the highest return on that time? Because time is a resource too. And for nonprofit leaders, time is a precious resource. And so really thinking about the highest leverage, use of your time, I feel like is so important. So I love that you are teaching that inside your program. Do you have like a framework for doing that? Or do you use the grid where with like the four quadrants of like...
Eisenhower matrix is incredible. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just Google it. It's like all over the place. It's incredible. I do have something called the sprouted method that really just is a reminder that like everything happens in seasons, and you can't always be going 90 miles an hour. You have to pause and plan and build your blueprint. And then you need to focus on kind of growing, like bringing all of your resources together, making sure that you can grow that plan, making sure that you have all the pieces in place, which is essential. Like, full disclosure, I live on a farm. So like seasons are very like,
yes,
very important. But, after you build that blueprint, you got to bring all of your resources together, and then you gotta fuel the flame. You have to, it's like you get the seeds in the ground, and then you got to put the fertilizer on, you got to get the water and the sunshine to make it grow, and then you harvest and you boost your impact. And so does that take you a year? Does that take you a month? You're just always in some sort of phase or some sort of season to get you to that point where you can create that sustained impact. Because impact is created by little tiny habits and routines every single day. It's not one big $1 million check that just happens. You might see somebody get that $1 million check, but it's all of the habits and routines that they did prior to getting that check. It didn't just land in their lap. Mm-hmm. So getting really clear, okay, you want to raise $1 million. Well, what are all the different things that you need to do to get there? Mm-hmm. And I think one thing that I think also small organizations, just nonprofits in general, we don't take advantage of technology. There are so many automations, so many really useful tools that can save a ton of time. And so, something like Calendly, you sent me a Calendly link to schedule this call. We didn't have to go back and forth. It was beautiful. So I would love if nonprofits took that. That's another piece of what I really try to teach. I was like, here are some like really simple tools to use for you to save more time, get more time back in your day, so that you can focus on all those habits and routines that are going to raise you the $1 million.
Yeah. And I feel like I have gotten pushback on things like that. Well, there's a cost to it. Yeah, it's like $15 a month. Let's like do the math on the return on investment of $15 a month. I realize that every penny is precious. I get that. But like if that $15 a month for Calendly, for example, would save you 2 hours, even if you just did the straight math of take your salary divided by how many hours in a year, your salary is definitely more likely more than the $15 a month that it costs. And I feel like as entrepreneurs, we do that all the time. It's like, okay, great. Well, I'm going to pay for this because how much time is it going to save me? Great. It's going to save me way more than the cost. Done. But I feel like in the nonprofit space, we're like, oh, but it's $15. I don't know. We're like, don't do that math often enough to realize, wait, that's actually a huge cost savings that I just found for us by paying 15.
I walk people through that math.
You do the math. Oh, I love that.
And okay, here's something that I have in my, if people have, shout out to Stephanie. If you have not gone and gotten the Profit Playbook on her website, it is a free, go get it. I use that thing in my business every single day. And I now have a tab that is all the different tech and software that I use in my business. I spend $10,000 a year on tech. 10,000. I did the math. That tech, that $10,000, 3 full-time people. That's like $90,000. So that's a $80,000 savings.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
And there's free versions. You do get what you pay for, but there's a lot of ways to use technology to help you save time so that you can do all of those things. So
Exactly. Because that is not like you scheduling appointments and going back and forth via email 50 times to like find a common meeting time. Like that's not why you were hired. That is not your gift to the world, to the mission that you're working for. And so I love that you're helping sort of transform that mindset. And I loved what you're talking about, planting seeds and sort of, your farm life. I'm not a farmer and I don't even really do very well at keeping houseplants alive. So that is not my gift, but I do talk all the time about building a strong foundation, and a lot of times I'm talking about it related to your finances and your money management. But I think it goes across the entire organization. And really, it takes time. It takes brick by brick to build this strong foundation. And I have had conversations with a couple organizations that I work with, and they're like, oh, I just saw this organization get $5 million from Mackenzie Scott. Why can't we get $5 million from Mackenzie Scott? Because, she's giving a whole lot of money away. And actually one of our clients did get a significant gift from her, but they have spent years building that strong foundation, not only with their finances, but in all areas of the organization. And so while, you see them post on LinkedIn and it looks like overnight random success, no, the foundation has been built over years and years because they have had the time and the focus to build that foundation. So I love that you're helping helping EDs like continue to build that foundation, to plant the seeds, whatever metaphor you choose, because that is what is going to lead to lasting impact. Because we don't want to be like a flash in the pan success where, yeah, sure, we get $1 million randomly overnight. Because yes, could it happen? Of course. But then it's gone, and the impact, the lasting impact, the sustainability that you want to have is not there because you didn't have that foundation to build on. So I love that you are helping executive directors focus on that, because it's not often, that's not really fun. Like, that's not like the sexy stuff that, you know, that you work on in your business, like setting up Calendly. That's not like fun, but like, that's the stuff and that is going to lead to long lasting impact. So I love that. And I think you make it fun, right? Do you make it fun?
I mean, I try to. I definitely add a lot of fun gifts because, you know, got to be able to laugh. I really do try to bring in the human side of it. Sometimes this stuff is hard. And like I said, like I'm doing some fractional ED work and I don't always get it right. I just said that I was up way too late doing tax letters because I didn't do it the most. I tried and then I didn't. And then I had to like, here, I'm just gonna like put it all out there. I created a Zap that was going to take the email. It was going to create a draft email. This organization doesn't have a CRM. It would have been a lot easier. We're working on that. I created a draft email. And then I realized that I didn't actually attach the receipt. So I had to individually attach the receipt in every single letter. I know how to do that now. That is a skill. I now know how to do that. You have to be okay making mistakes. You have to be okay not getting it right. And I try to be really honest about that. I try to share when I don't get it right. I try to teach how I did it so that you can try it. I had an ED at the end or beginning of January talk to me, and she was like, you know, I'd been in your program for a year and I had heard about all the different pieces that you were talking about in different ways that, you know, I could save time. And I'd been trying, but I just wasn't like seeing it happen. And then it was the end of the year. I had to get a couple of pieces of communication out. And it just like, I was able to integrate all of the different programs. I was able to basically send, I think she said like 250 Loom videos out to all of her donors and ended up raising like an extra like $30,000 because of that. What?
Amazing.
But it was slow progress for an entire year. And then it all came together when it mattered. And it was incredible. Does that happen to everyone? I mean, it happens a lot, actually. I'll be honest, it does happen a lot. But it's different things that help you build that foundation. And it does take time, but it's setting up those systems, setting up those habits and routines to be successful, and running your nonprofit like a business and being really, I don't want to say running your nonprofit like a business because there are some very distinct differences, but having an entrepreneurial mindset is really helpful, and not being afraid to try and fail and try again and get a little bit better and try again. And then you figure it out. And that's very helpful.
Yeah. I think that's so important. And speaking of mindset, when you first start working with an ED or an ED joins your program, what like mindset do you feel like they have that's maybe holding them back, or that is just like not serving them? What mindsets do you see?
Scarcity.
Tell me more. Tell me more.
I mean, and you obviously, you know this so well, being in kind of the financial industry, like people have so many emotions around money, and there's a lot of baggage that comes along with that. And then we layer on an industry that is underfunded, under-resourced, and around because we aren't providing the necessary services for people to like live and have a good life and not be hungry and have homes. Like, it's kind of messed up. So there's a lot of layers there. But I think that small organizations, big organizations, EDs, everyone kind of comes in with, I'm so committed to this mission and to solving this problem, and I will do anything to make that happen. And I think if we back up, that creates a lot of problems, because you don't often have all the resources that you need. You don't have the skills that you need. You have to kind of dilute all of your skills into, what's that saying, like a mile wide and an inch deep, instead of going a mile deep. You have to be good at a whole bunch of different things, which, if everything is a priority, then nothing is a priority. So scarcity is, people are worried, people are stressed, people want to do really good work and make a big impact, but they're just kind of all over the place, scattered and burned out, and they come in when they're at that point. And so helping them breathe, helping them pause, helping them prioritize, helping them reclaim their time so that they can go and create a more beautiful world.
Yeah, I feel like we're always trying to do the most with the least.
100%.
It's like, yeah, let's cram as much as we can into our tiny little budget without regard for really anything. Let's just do the most with the least. And I feel like there's also, this is not meant to be like a complaining session about the nonprofit sector, because it's not, but but I think there's also this, we wear all the hats, and we wear all the hats as like a badge of honor. We're proud to wear all the hats. We can do all the things, versus, again, something I've learned being a business owner, being an entrepreneur, is like really focusing in figuring out your zone of genius and focusing in on your zone of genius and trying to spend the majority of your time in your zone of genius. And I'm pretty sure that came from The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. I think that's where that concept came from, which is a very good book and I highly recommend. But I feel like that's like in stark contrast to wearing all the hats is your zone of genius. And do you see, after EDs are in your membership, do you see them starting to hone in on their zone of genius, really what they are amazingly good at, and, either delegating or getting rid of or outsourcing the other things so they stop wearing all the hats?
Yes. I think that there's sometimes there's still that like funny space where I recognize that I need to delegate, or I recognize this is not my zone of genius. So kind of containing that and saying, okay, I don't have the budget to hire someone. What can I do to make this more efficient? What can I do to make this easier? Maybe it's technology. Maybe it's, bringing somebody in short term. So it isn't always jumping to like, I have to delegate, I have to get it off my plate. It's like really thinking about each piece strategically to eventually get you to the place where you can fully delegate it. But sometimes in our organization, it's
not possible.
Yeah. And sometimes people push back. They're like, yeah, you keep saying delegate, but I don't have anyone to delegate to. And I was like, yes, you do. Delegate to your future self.
Okay. I like that because it, somebody might be listening to this and be like, okay, yeah, I want to work in my zone of genius. I read the book. Like I want to do this, but I'm literally a one person shop, which I think you work with a lot of those. And so I think that that's a really important point to your future self, or to like delegate to a software program that costs $15 a month. Like that is the thing. You don't necessarily need, new team members or whatever. So how are you seeing like leaders of nonprofits get creative in terms of, the way that they are freeing up their time? Maybe okay, a lot of us like actually do have very slim resources. I get that. Like, let's not pretend that we all, are sitting on a bunch of money. It's very slim resources for a lot of organizations. So how are you seeing leaders get creative in terms of, giving themselves more space and, yeah.
So I think it's actually not even like getting creative, it's simplifying. So if you are an organization that has very few resources, it's getting very clear on what you do. Now, there are thousands of dog rescue organizations. So how do you set yourself apart? Well, you are the only dog rescue that rehomes dogs to people on farms. You get really specific and very clear about why you are the only organization that can do what you do. Instead of trying to be all things to all people, you get really specific and really simple. What happens is people then are like, oh, I know somebody who needs a farm dog. You got to go to this organization. But if you're like, oh, I don't know, there was that organization that, does dog rescue, got to get really specific on what you're doing. The other thing that happens when you simplify, it's a lot easier to say no. It's a lot easier to say no. We're so good at, again, trying to be all things to all people. So we say yes to all of the things when it's not really what our mission is doing. It's not really where we should be spending our time. And so kind of back to your question, how are EDs getting creative? It's less about that and getting very clear and simplifying what they are doing so that that's just what they are focusing on. And they're doubling down on what makes their organization so awesome and just putting all of their resources towards that instead of trying to spread themselves too thin.
I love that. So if anybody's listening and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to do this. I want more systems. I want more processes. It is not about getting creative and implementing like 50 different new tools to save you time. It's about simplifying. I love that. And just getting so crystal clear on who you serve and what you do and why you're here and focus only on that. And like you said, it makes saying no like so much easier. Do you mean saying no to, what do you mean? Like, so what do you see organizations saying no to? They've simplified, they have a very clear focus. Now they can say no to what? Is it funding that maybe requires them to do something different programmatically that's outside of what they normally do? Or what else do you see organizations saying no to in pursuit of their larger goals and their mission?
Yeah, such a great question. I think that, I think funding, we oftentimes will apply for a grant and the grant will be like, and we want a new program. So you're like creating a new program. It's like, but we actually do this thing really well, but you want us to do this so we can get money. This is also hard. Turning down money is extremely hard. So that's one thing. It's when board member is like, oh, we should add a new event. And, I saw this other organization, they do a golf tournament, they raise a ton of money. We should totally do that. This is like legit example from my real life. Okay. We're already doing 2 other events that were super successful. And we tried to add that 3rd event. Surprise, it flopped big time because we didn't have the time and energy not
to go all in.
But we should have just doubled down on what we were doing. When I was an ED, it was a youth empowerment program. And so we were constantly asked by farmers markets and parades and schools to be there and like set up a booth.
Mm.
That took so much time, so much time. And it was me for a long time. Like those stupid 10 by 10 pop-up tents. If you need that up,
You're an expert.
me, call me. But here's the thing. I was doing so many of them that I wasn't meeting with donors. I wasn't working on the program pieces that needed to be done because I was spread so thin doing all these other things, saying yes to all these people. And so I started saying no. When somebody brought it to me, if it was a volunteer or something like that, I'd be like, I will give you the supplies to do that. I will show you how to put up that 10 by 10 tent, and I will let you do that. That was hard. That was letting go of control of a piece of the organization that I felt like I had to be out there and doing this. But when I did that, I had more people who were like, hey, my community is doing this. Can I get a booth box so that I can go and do that? I'm like, heck yeah, you can. But yes. If I didn't start saying no, I mean, I did not need to be at the 4th of July parade making hot dogs. That was not what my organization did.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Your time is not best served setting up a booth and manning it womaning it for 8 hours.
Exactly. And yeah, there's examples of that all over. You know, it's also when somebody's like, oh, you know, we run a women's shelter and we need to have kid activities. We don't have, you know, youth programming, so we'll create youth programming. What if you said, no, we're going to focus on what we're really good at, which is nurturing women in their time of need and partnering with an organization that's really good at what they do with youth services.
Love it. Yeah. With like, stay in your lane from a very loving place, but like stay in your lane, focus on what you're really good at. And that's advice that we hear all the time in the entrepreneurial space as well. You can't have multiple ideal clients because if you're serving everybody, you're serving nobody, like you said. So I love that. And there's a lot of power in saying no, because it really does free you up to focus on what you know works. Rachel, this has been so good. I feel like we can keep talking, but let's not just to keep the episode kind of short. I feel like we probably have another 3 hours in us. However, I want to ask you one final question. What does a prosperous nonprofit look like to you?
It's where the people inside the organization feel good about what they're doing when they are working and when they are focused on the mission and can close their computer and walk away and also feel good about that.
Beautiful. I agree. I love that. Well, thank you so much. Where can our listeners find you? Because I know everyone's like, okay, Rachel, teach me all the tools and all the secrets to simplifying and getting my life back, while also making an incredible impact on the world through my organization. So where can they do that? Where can they find you?
Go to the challenge. So I've got a challenge. It's the productivity challenge. smallshopstrategies.com/challenge. Go check that out. You're going to learn. It's like a masterclass. You'll learn so much goodness. Go there. I hang out mostly on Instagram. I'm at Small Shop Strategies. Mostly you're going to see like random happenings on the farm, the silly things that my dogs like to do.
Your dogs. Yes.
You know, I do some teaching, and then I'm also on LinkedIn as often as I can. And then I have a podcast too. It's called Sprout, and it is it's the place for small nonprofit executive directors to just get some really practical step-by-step advice. So yeah,
Love that.
come hang
Go
out.
listen to Rachel. She's so much fun, and do her challenge. I've heard amazing things. I need to do your challenge.
Okay. And honestly, if you're an entrepreneur listening, like, you can do it too. It's so practical, whether you're nonprofit or not. It's great for that individual process. So yeah.
Awesome. We could all use that. All right. Well, thank you, Rachel, so much. As always, it was amazing to chat with you. Thank you.
Thank you.